Om 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 Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Hari Om. Welcome to this Sunday evening's talk on Chinmaya Yoga. Together we can, together we must, together we will. Commit to win and win you will. What are we going to do together? What are we going to commit ourselves to? The task of quietening the mind, which is yoga. A mind that is not disturbed by circumstances outside, however circumstances are, whether they are to our like or to our dislike, or whether they give us joy or whether they give us sorrow, or whether they give us an increased sense of identification of myself, or whether they deplete our identification with myself. Any ways situations happen, or any ways people around us are, or any way objects around us are, I will be in a state of balance is called yoga. Chinmaya Yoga is observing that mind which is in a state of balance. So what does Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda ji say in Hasten Slowly? Of course, when we are in the task of, when we are doing the sadhana, that is to balance the mind or to keep the mind quiet, it is a very difficult path. And so on that path, how should I keep myself? So Puja Gurudev says it is very important to have effort with enthusiasm. See, a mother who is carrying a 5 kg stone, carrying her own child, which is 5 kgs, has to run from point A to point B. When will the running be fast? If it is metered or monitored, we can easily say that the mother carrying the child, which is 5 kgs, can run faster than carrying that heavyweight stone, because in this case, the mother is running with something that she loves. So when we put our, when we train our efforts to something that I love, so then the path is going to be easy. Of course, we will not love the path of yoga because the sadhana is very difficult. So in that case, what do? I just have to turn my attention towards that path of yoga and understand that I love it because it is going to ultimately bring a quiet state of mind. Mano nigrahaya shraddha chet tasmin utsahaha bhavati. Utsahat tasminneva smritihi bhavet. Smritir dhadhyat tasmin ekagrata. This is in one of the explanations of the Yoga Sutras, which is quoted in Hasten Slowly. Mano nigrahaya shraddha chet. If I have intense enthusiasm, shraddha means not just liking something. It is, I love something, I want. Shraddha is a motivating factor in me which can make me wake up in the morning to do something. That is called shraddha. If I have intense shraddha or intense enthusiasm towards the task of controlling my mind, if that is the only big task that I'm going to love doing and pay my attention to, then I get tremendous enthusiasm. A tremendous column of energy is raised. And utsahat tasmin neva smritir bhavet. When a column of energy is raised for the task of doing something, I will always be reminded of the task. And when the memory of the task becomes very strong in me, then I am able to concentrate on that work. The anxious urgency is called shraddha. As a seeker cultivates himself and grows in his depth, shraddha, he discovers himself in himself an endless enthusiasm to put forth any amount of joyous efforts at mastering his mind. Without such a spring of enlivening enthusiasm, the sadhana becomes laborious, unrewarding, burdensome, and sooner or later, the seeker leaves the field vanquished and routed by the mind. So, the mind can very easily topple our efforts. The mind is a very alert being in us. The mind is like a very alert child in us. More than the child, the mind is like the alert teacher of the child. And when the child is throwing, child means us, the small personality in us that is wanting things outside. When the child in us is not ready to turn the mind towards higher pursuits in life, the teacher will always provide the child with lesser and lesser areas for exhausting his vasanas, smaller and smaller areas. So, in the same way, when we don't show the spiritual enthusiasm for the highest truth of knowing myself or achieving something great in my life, then automatically what is going to happen is the mind will be turned towards smaller and smaller pursuits for happiness, and I will never find the energy and enthusiasm to pursue the higher. So, to pursue the higher, I need the energy and enthusiasm. That is why, even in the Bhagavad Gita, after describing what is the truth and after describing what are the pitfalls to the truth, in the last but one chapter, before the final chapter of Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, meaning attaining moksha or freedom or liberation, the last but one chapter is called Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga. The three types of faiths, or the three types of Shraddha we can have that will give us enthusiasm towards our goal. So the three types of Shraddha are Tamasic Shraddha, Rajasic Shraddha, and Sattvic Shraddha. Tamasic Shraddha means a faith I have towards protecting my state of inertia, my present conditions. Whatever I have right now is enough for me. And I want to protect that and I want to encourage that is tamasic. Rajasic Shraddha is having a kind of goal in my life, a vain goal or a vain pursuit, which is just going to give me sense pleasures, something a little better than what I have right now, but not ultimate and permanent joy and happiness. So that is called Rajasic Shraddha. And it can manifest through our actions, it can manifest through our words, it can manifest through our yoga sadhanas, whatever paths of practices we do. It can manifest through our knowledge, it can manifest in every part of our being. Rajasic Shraddha. And then you have Sattvic Shraddha, is I have the necessary faith and enthusiasm, the spiritual enthusiasm, to pursue the highest goal of knowing the truth. So Gurudev here says, once Shraddha, the sincere urgency for mastering the mind, has manifested in us, spiritual enthusiasm in applying ourselves to its achievement immediately follows. When there is an urgency inside, then enthusiasm follows. And where there is this enthusiasm, we cannot but steadily remember our determined goal. In the morning when I want to wake up, why am I not able to wake up is because I do not have that, I do not have the memory of what I need to do today. What is my goal in life? What do I have to get up for in the morning? When a seeker lives thus in the constant remembrance of his ideal to be attained, his concentration must naturally grow. The capacity of the mind to entertain consistently one idea to the exclusion of all other dissimilar thought is called concentration. So if I have to study in some subject, if I have to concentrate on subject, other than mathematics, I should not be able to think about any other topic or any other subject. Then I will have concentration in that subject. The single pointed mental self-application to an exclusive idea becomes inevitable in a seeker who remembers his goal constantly. If I understand that my goal is to quieten the mind by purifying the mind and keeping the thought one pointed. Shuddhata, Sukshmata, Ekagrata. The process is three-way. Shuddhata means is to purify the mind. Purifying the mind happens by not entertaining, working on my anger, hatred, jealousy. We cannot not entertain those desires. But if we have anger, we can observe the anger, we can observe the hatred, we can observe the intense desire, we can observe the jealousy, we can observe the infatuation or moha, delusion, and we can observe the envy that we have. We can observe the fear. We can observe the selfishness. And we can observe the different qualities we have that are not going to take us on the path of integration or yoga or the truth. So by observing these qualities, we can make the mind pure and also by working on them independently. And it also happens with devotion to the Lord, devotion to a very high ideal, devotion to Ishvara or the master who can guide us, spiritual master or the guru. When we have the devotion to these beings, then automatically the mind gets purified, Shuddhata. Sukshmata is focusing and concentrating on that one topic or the one goal we have to make the mind subtle. And then Ekagrata comes when the mind becomes one-pointed and concentrated. Concentration is a secret weapon which we must have to storm the citadel of truth. But this weapon in an impure heart may convert all its very successes into a suicidal self-annihilation. Therefore, we must cultivate the ethical and moral virtues side by side, and a bosom rich in these glorious traits alone can use its powers of concentration for the creative programs of mastering the mind. If I have terrific concentration, but my goal is not very great, my goal is very subversive, the universe is not going to allow me to execute my purposes because the universe wants everything to happen in peace, everything to happen in harmony, and everything should happen beautifully in the universe. So the universe does not entertain any thought or any idea which can disrupt the peace and harmony ahead of time. So if I have the necessary concentration in yoga and I'm able to focus my mind and make it one pointed, if my goal is not going to be pure, then my path will be subverted into many stupid, idiotic ways which are going to fluster all my plans. All my plans will not work out because the universe does not want me to work out those plans. So, keeping my plans, keeping my desires in tune with the desires of the universe, then I will be able to succeed in what I want to do in life. So, Gurudev here quotes from the Yoga Vasishtha. It says, Yadana bhavyate bhavaha क्वचित् जगति वस्तुनि तदा हृदम्बरे शून्ये कथं चित्तं प्रजायते मनोयन्त्रस्य चलने कारणं वेदनं विदुः. The engine of the mind functions on the oil of perception. The mind is coming out through the sense organs, and that provides a fuel for the mind to travel on. The mind running out through the sense organs reaches the object, which means the object of sight, object of hearing, object of smelling, object of tasting, and object of touching. There it molds itself into the shape of the object. It is the mind. I look at an object. The object is not giving me the information. My mind, through the eyes, reaches the object, touches the object, gathers information from the object, and reports it back through the eyes to the brain, and then the information is processed. In the same way, the object of sound the object of smell, the object of taste, and the object of touch. When an object thought glows in the light of consciousness, inside in the mind, there is this light of consciousness, and the thought of that object glows in this light. Then the knowledge of that object is born. This is Jnana Yoga. Yoga has got many ways. Yoga means to quieten the mind. There are many ways to quieten the mind. And the path of Jnana Yoga is to quieten the mind through knowledge. This is perception according to Vedanta. So knowledge of the object is born when the mind travels through the sense organs, falls on the objects, reports back the information, the details, and the thought is shining in that light of consciousness. I see that thought and I get the knowledge. I do not see the object, but I see the thought within me. The more the perceptions, the more the agitations. So if my mind has to be quiet, last week we saw there should be the quantity, quality, and the direction of the flow decides how quiet the mind is going to be. If there are many objects, if all my 5 sense organs are looking at one object and concentrated on one object, and I'm receiving information from that object for what I choose to do, then my mind will be quiet and focused. But if all the 5 sense organs are directed towards one object, because that object has attracted my mind, then I'm doomed to be the mind is doomed to be destroyed, because without its own control, it's being dragged to that object of perception. The more the perceptions, the more the agitation. So that is why the difference between an untidy room and a neat and tidy room, neat, tidy, and clean room, is the mind can become easily quiet in a tidy room, because in an untidy room where the things are haywire, the objects are all messed up and muddled up and cluttered, the mind travels, that is the object of our attention. The mind travels through the eyes and rests on that clutter and rests on all that restlessness and the confusion, and the mind reports back the confusion to me. And so I feel very confused, I feel very depressed, I feel very agitated. But when the room is neat, tidy, clean, and beautiful, and everything that is very divine, like the sunlight, the air, the sky, or the beauty of the surroundings, the beauty of nature falls on this room, and that room reflects the beauty of the nature, beauty of the surroundings, the cleanliness and tidiness, and the neatness, which is the core personality of a human being, is Shuddha or purity. When that purity is there outside, the mind falls on that room, it reports back that purity, and that is the only one thought that I have in my mind is purity. So when the thoughts are less, the mind is less agitated. When the thoughts are more, the mind is terribly agitated. The rising of the pictures of outer objects and memories of the past experiences in the mind, Vishaya Spuranam, constitute perception. And so long as these perceptions are rising, the mind will be buzzing with its irresistible activities, says Puja Gurudev. Perception is not only about the objects outside. The main perception that we have is the thoughts about the past and the anxieties about the future and the agitations in the present moment that we have within us. When we cognize that, then we get agitated. When we cognize an agitated thought, when we see an agitated thought, when we perceive an agitated thought, when we perceive a worried thought, the mind becomes worried. When we perceive an agitated thought, the mind becomes agitated. When we see an angry thought, the mind becomes angry. When I see a confused thought, the mind becomes confused. Not to cooperate with the mental dancings and not to lend them the grace of life by our identification with them, abhavanam, brings about the exhaustion of vasanas. What a beautiful one-liner Gurudev has said here. The whole, if you see the whole YouTube industry is now talking about how to have the right identification of my own self to achieve success in life. You see, so many videos are there on that purpose. The Yoga Shastras talk of this. The Yoga Sutras says this of abhavanam. So when the agitated thought is there in my mind, I look at that agitated thought, and if I'm not aware, I sink into that thought and I'm ruled by that thought. The Yoga Sutra says, Yogaha chitta vritti nirodha. Stopping the agitations of the mind is yoga. Then what happens? I stand as a perceiver. Tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. I remain the seer. If I don't remain the seer, what will happen? If there is an agitated thought in my mind, I become agitated. If there is an angry thought in my mind, I become angry. If there is a jealous thought in my mind, I become jealous. If there is a procrastinating thought in my mind, I become the procrastinator. The I is something like a small child that wants to play cricket. Maybe there are so many big boys playing cricket, and there is a small kid, the brother of one of those people. For everything, he will come. I will bat. He will not be able to lift the bat also, but he'll keep running and coming to the ground. I will bat. Then I will bowl. I will field, or whatever it is. The same way is this I, like a small child. For every thought, this I will come and attach itself. So angry thought, yes, my thought. Then lazy thought, my thought, my thought. Then busy thought, my thought. Restless thought, my thought. Disgusted thought, my thought. Messy thought, my thought. Cluttered thought, my thought. For everything, this I will identify with that thought. And then there is problem. So if we need to keep the mind quiet, this vritti is here, this agitation is here, this I is identified with the agitation, and the I is also agitated. So first way is to stop the agitation, control the thought by some process of yoga sadhana, and then automatically when the thought is controlled, the I releases itself from that identification with the thought, and the I is free. If that does not happen, if I don't control the thought, the identification does not, the I is continuing to be identifying itself with that thought. Not to cooperate with the mental dancings and not to lend them the grace of life. Very beautiful. This thought is agitated. This I consciousness is looking at the thought. Because the consciousness is looking at the thought, this thought is getting more and more energy and more agitated. Whenever somebody is like creating some ruckus, if he doesn't have food, automatically the ruckus will stop. But if you feed that person food without doing a course correction of the ruckus, the person is going to get more strength and energy to throw that ruckus. In the same way, the thought is creating a ruckus. So stop giving that thought food by concentrating on the thought. By whatever it is, that thought can be an agitated thought, an excited thought. Of course, when the thoughts are calm, the thoughts are pure, there is no problem. When the thoughts are impure, the thoughts are agitated, the thoughts are disturbed, then identifying with them is a problem. It brings about exhaustion of vasanas. This disidentification with the thought. It is like the I is completely involved in the thought. It is from the outside, from the inside, it is covered, and it is covered by the thought also. So with awareness, the I can withdraw itself out of the thought. So the thought becomes separate and the I becomes separate. And the I is still watching the thought. With the understanding of this process of Jnana Yoga, know that because the I is giving attention and concentration to the thought is getting energized. With that knowledge, detach the I and begin to watch the thought from a distance. First, give distance. Even when the virus came, first there was social distancing. We were able to identify the virus. We were able to identify the problem. We created distance between people. That was the way by which we could cut the chain of that. I'm not saying that we have succeeded completely, whatever is happening in the world now, but the process of disidentification, the process of moving apart and allowing that the particle of virus to exist on its own is the way by which that virus will go away. As long as we are connected together, we are giving energy and identification to that, it will thrive and it will multiply. In the same way, when we quarantine the thoughts, any disturbing thought, any negative thought, any angry thought or hatred thought, any thought that does not make me feel like myself, the first thing is to quarantine that thought. Draw a mental circle around the thought. Know that I am the seer of the thought. And so I become different and the thought become different. And then as long as I'm going to see the thought, it is going to get energy. So focus my attention on something else, something greater, something nobler. Automatically my energy supply to the thought goes and the thought just has to fall. To summarize, therefore, to conquer the mind, we must reduce our clinging attachments, end our thirst to enjoy objects. When we are eager to master our mind, less number of thoughts arise in us. Perception of objects feeds the engine of our mind. So cut off the steady supply of vitality to the mind by a bhavana. A bhavana is, I am not going to focus on this. Focus on what I want, don't focus on what I don't want. When I focus on what I want, automatically my focus is done. Focus can be done only on one thing. Proper attention, complete attention, the mind can be directed on one thing, one and one thing only. If it is on many things, it's going to be distracted, and so it will not work. So when I focus on one goal, one very high goal in my life, automatically my focus on other unimportant things or things that can bind me are taken away from me. When thus stripped of its features one by one, the mind dries up and withers away. So quarantine the thoughts, focus your attention on something great and something glorious, something beautiful, something that makes you happy, something that makes you quiet, something that enriches you, something that makes you look up high in life for whatever I want to achieve. The goal of life, the pursuit of what I'm born for, what I want to do in life. And especially when we focus on, that is why it is called Uparama. Uparama is a very important quality. Is after withdrawing the mind through discrimination and dispassion, I have to focus the mind on something great, something noble, which can be my own work. That is a path shown by Bhagavad Gita in chapter 3. Says, Yogasthak Kuru Karmani. Yogasthak Kuru. Do your work standing in yoga, meaning unity with your own self, and do actions. What actions? Your own designated work, whether it's at the office, whether it's at school, or whether it's at home. There is some work which comes to me automatically for me to do, or which I take up voluntarily and do it. So do that work with total concentration. Sangam Tyaktva. Sangam Tyaktva means drop the attachments to the thoughts. Focus your attention on the work. Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya. Siddhi asiddhayoho samo bhutva. So when there is, whether I am able to concentrate my mind because of this, or I am not able to concentrate my mind because of this, treat it with equanimity. When there is equanimity, you treat it with equanimity. If I don't concentrate, then I berate myself. If I'm able to concentrate, I enrich, I applaud and praise myself. So both way I will suffer. Whether there is extreme joy or extreme sorrow, there is suffering. Siddhi asiddhayoho samo bhutva. So whether success comes or failure comes in whatever work I do, keep my mind in equanimity. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Balance of mind is yoga. So the culmination of yoga is keeping the mind in a state of balance. And that can be achieved by withdrawing myself from multiple thoughts, focus on one energizing, enriching, supreme thought with dedication and concentration and intense energy called intense loving attention, which is called Shraddha. And then that thought will absorb my consciousness and raise my level of thinking and also raise the standard of my life and take me to the goal of my life. Taking us to the goal of our life, discovering the purpose of life is the purpose of yoga. Other than that purpose, for whatever sake we may be doing yoga, it is only purpose, movement and change. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So till we meet next week at Chinmaya Yoga, 6 to 6:30, We shall commit ourselves to win, and win we will. Together we can, together we must, together we will. Hari Om.